funk you up. Uptown funk you up. Uptown funk you up. Uptown funk you up. I said uptown funk you up. Uptown funk you up. Uptown funk you up. Uptown funk you up. Come on, dance, jump on it. If you said and flown it. If you freak dead and own it. Don't brag about it, come show me. Come on, dance, jump on it. If you said and flown it. Well, it's Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. Come on. Don't believe me, just watch. 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 Hey, 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 oh!
Well, I hope you enjoyed your ice cream. That was a cool little cake. It's showtime. So if you will settle into your chairs, and we'll get things going underway here. So if you will, please take a moment to turn your attention to our video screens as we take the opportunity to bring you a little bit of happiness, a little bit of joy, and a little bit of good stuff with a video tribute before we make our introductions of our program tonight.
When he was 10 years old, he met Jesse Owens. That meeting would change Frederick Carlton Lewis forever. In many ways, both large and small, it was a kind of torch passed from one Olympic legend to another. Because for the next 25 years on the track, Carl Lewis would become to his generation what Jesse Owens was to his. Carl Lewis owns 9 gold medals, 1 silver in the sport. No one's ever eclipsed that. But he accomplished all of his glory across 4 different Olympics, including an astonishing win at age 35 in Atlanta in the long jump. Another gold medal, his last, on his final leap for glory.
It's the first time I have seen him run down the runway for real this entire year. And look at his reaction. He knows he just caught a big one.
Carl Lewis may be the most misunderstood legend in American sports history. He may well be the finest all-around athlete in American sports history as well. It would be hard to argue both. Carl was confident and sure of his ability, but some called him smug and aloof. When he draped an American flag across his body after winning 4 gold medals in Los Angeles in 1984, some of the critics called it disrespectful. Never mind that numerous gold medal winning athletes embraced the flag in the same way. Carl Lewis is today a coach at the University of Houston track team. He is married, is a father. He'll turn 61 years old in July. It's really hard to believe. We are close to 40 years since the '84 Olympics. But what he did.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, to bring on our guest, and each of you have a commemorative hat to take home from tonight, please welcome the legendary Roy Firestone.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. I want everybody to please, if they can, take their seats because this is going to be really special, we think. We've got some rare footage to show you and some stories I promise you have never heard before. One of the things that I'm very proud of throughout my career is I would show folks, if I could, a side of somebody that you may not have known before. You are going to hear a couple of stories tonight that are going to blow your mind about this guy. What can I say, though? In 2000 or 1999 onto the 2000, I was part of the ESPN Sports Century team, and we had to come up with the athlete of the century. As you know now, it was Michael Jordan. God bless Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player, or one of them for sure, of all time. Muhammad Ali was 1A or 2. But the man who should have been, and I believe with all my heart, is the greatest athlete this country has ever produced. I'm talking all-around athlete, diverse athlete, can do many things, is the man we're going to introduce. 9 gold medals, 1 silver in track and field. No one has ever eclipsed that. I don't think anyone ever will. In fact, he could have been part of 5 different Olympics. Indeed, he made the Olympic team in 1980, but for the boycott, he couldn't compete. So imagine, that covers 20 years. This is an astonishing athlete. I believe, as I said before, he is simply the greatest athlete, not just track athlete, the greatest all-around athlete this country ever produced. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Lewis.
Thank you. Okay. I want to say something first.
Sure.
Thank you for having me here because, you know, we're talking about young people and helping their lives. Well, back in the mid to late 1960s, my mother was a PE teacher, and she was always angry about the fact that girls didn't have a chance to run track. She was also a track athlete.
Yep.
So she kept saying, put it in the school program, put it in the curriculum. They wouldn't do it. So she started a girls program back in 1969 for just girls only to run track. It started with 8 girls. And the second year, we boys got angry about it. And the funny thing is that that first year, I vaguely remember, because I was only 8 years old, and my parents, you know, the story's kind of funny because my mother tells a story one way, my father tells it another. She says, I wanted girls to have track, so I took your dad down and we started a track program called the Willingboro Track Club. My father says, I was so inspired by your mother wanting to help girls, so I told her, let's go down and start a track club. What do you believe? Anyway, so.
Wow.
But the first year, since boys weren't involved, I was young, my sister was young, so they told us to go sit in the long jump pit and act like we were at the beach. I'm from New Jersey, so somehow I don't know what the deal is, why they call it the shore there, but that's another story. But I started my athletic career in that world by playing in a long jump pit like it was the beach.
Wow.
And to think that, you know, years later, that would be where I kind of made my athletic career.
I do want people to know, you didn't mention it, that Carl's mom was a Pan American Games competitor, a hurdler, correct?
Yeah, hurdler, yeah.
Your father was a civil rights activist, but everyone in your family really were athletes. Carol was is she a medalist too?
Yeah,
right?
she made 3 Olympic teams.
Olympic
World Championship medalist, yeah.
People forget that Carol was and she's also a commentator, or was.
Yeah, she was a commentator for years. Well, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it has.
I've been retired 25 years, so you know.
That, by the way, that's crazy that you've been going 25 years from that.
Every time I look in the mirror, I realize that. You know, because they're like things, you know, okay, there are a lot of younger people here, but most of you guys understand what we're talking about, okay? So, but it's like now it changes because now you're older, you're like saying, oh my God, where did that come from or where did that go, you know?
Well, I don't know if you can see these monitors, but maybe you'll inch up or something because we can't really see a video return here, but maybe you can see over there or inch up or something. I'm going to talk about you as a little boy first. Because there you are, I think you're 9 or 10.
Yeah.
You can inch up a little bit.
I remember him.
And there you are with your sister, I believe that is.
See that activist dad, look at he already has it ready. That's, you know.
And there's the whole family, as we mentioned before.
Yeah.
But you were a late bloomer. You were slow. You were one of the slowest kids in your school.
Yeah.
And when you started running. And then something happened. I think You know, it sounds like it's part of the lure. There you are. I think you're pretty close to teenager there. But you meet Jesse Owens, and it changed your life. And it sounds dramatic, but it's true.
Yeah,
he said something to you after you won a race, and it was the first time it clicked in your head, I am somebody. I can be somebody.
Yeah.
Did we show the picture of Jesse?
You know what's interesting about that is that I was a late bloomer, very, very late. You know, I don't know how tall I am now, but I did peak out at 6'3" a few years ago.
Were you 6'3"?
Yeah, I got to 6'3".
Wow.
But I know you. On the other side now. But what happened is when I finished, when I met Jesse Owens, the first time I was 10. And the funny story is that my father's from Chicago. And so he used to always talk about, you know, Jesse Owens lived in Chicago for a while and he had a cleaners. And so he told your family as a little kid, when I was a kid, I used to go up to this thing and he'd shoo us off from the store and blah, blah, blah. So he was a big fan. He was a Chicago fan. And so he told us these stories growing up because my mother never talked about track and field at all. And the only reason we knew she did it is because we went into the attic and saw old pictures and saw her old shoes and things. What is this about? And that's it. And my mother is pretty, they're actually unique people because
Is your mom still with us?
she's still here.
92?
92 years
92.
old. Yep. And so she's from Gadsden, Alabama. You know, he was from Montgomery. And so small town. And she ended up going to Tuskegee Institute then to go to school for track because the guy saw her at a trial for boys. And she beat some of the boys, and that happened. But what was interesting is that my grandfather, who I'm proudly named after, they didn't really give scholarships in those days. They gave a little bit of money, and so he went to her. And no one had ever been to college in her family, and he said, "Well, I want to go to college. This guy can take me." He said, "Well, where's the money?" But she said she came back, and he says, "Well, if that's what you want to do, we'll do it. We'll figure it out." And so she went to college, and through college, she was able to she made the Olympic team, but did not get a chance to go because of an injury. She missed the 52 team. She went to the Pan Am Games, and ironically, she said the first time she got on a plane was when she had to go to Argentina in 1951 to those Pan Am Games. So of course it was about 9 different flights. You fly like 2 hours and go and boom, 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 boom. But the interesting thing about it is that I found this out about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. She always talked about, we went to Argentina, we did the event, we did that, and she always wanted us to travel out of the country before high school ended, and we all had a chance to do that. And then I don't even know what we were going on. About 6 or 7 years ago, she says, "Oh yeah, when I was there, it was really a beautiful party that the president and the first lady of Argentina gave that day, and I was able to shake their hands and meet them, and it was so beautiful. It was the first president I've ever met in my life." And I was like, "Mom, that was like 1951. That was Eva Perón." And she goes, "Well, I guess that was her." That's Mom. "Mom, you met Evita." So that's kind of how it was. But what was interesting is that I was a late bloomer, but what I learned and why I relate to all these young people is that my parents started this club. I was not one of the good ones, but I was kind of, okay, I tried every event. I long jumped, I ran, I did hurdles, trying to find something. But what they always taught me was focus on being the best you can be. So I was one of those crazy kids that got 8th place, and they called the times. I said, "Yay!" And they're like, "What's he yelling for? He got like 8th." But what I didn't realize is that I was learning my craft when I wasn't any good. And I was small and skinny and shy. And then all of a sudden I started to grow. And I grew at the end of 10th grade when I was 15. I was 5'5" and 125 pounds.
5'5".
And 125 pounds. Now, mind you, Carol's 2 years younger. She was 5'9", and my mother was 5'7". So, they had a key, lock and key all the knives in the house because I was. So there's 4 of us. My brother, I had 2 older brothers. They were out of the house. So it was my mother, father, sister, and myself. And I was the shortest one in the house. So. My mother, I remember her saying, "We're going to take you to a doctor and see if there's something wrong with you." And the doctor started giving me, they started giving me these pills to take. It's like vitamin pills are going to make you grow. And so I took them religiously, and I put all my marks in the door jamb, and it's like, it's taller. She was lying. And so, and later she said they were just sugar pills. But, but the whole thing was, it was trying to teach a young person that you can be great. You can do something. Focus on being your best. And that's why this organization, I can relate so much to it, because, you know, my parents were public school teachers. So we were not hurting, but we were not rich. You know, Dad had a night job. But I know you just need people to care when you're young and just give you an opportunity. And my opportunity was people that cared. You know, they had 200 or 300 kids out there. They didn't pay attention to me until I did bad. And she said, I saw that race. But it's so important what's happening. And that's why I'm so happy you invited me, because I so relate to these young people.
That's so great. That's a wonderful way of putting it. But we saw that picture with Jesse, and I think it was at a track meet, or it may have, yeah. And you won the race, and he's giving out the awards, and he said, all right, who won the race? And you, I did. And he
in
said,
that voice.
the little guy won, right?
Yep, he sure
It was
did.
the first time someone acknowledged you, or one of the first times in your life, and you said, hey, Jesse Owens knows I'm a somebody because I won this race.
Right.
And a light bulb went off.
It was interesting because Jesse Owens, at that time, meant something, but what he was the guy that Dad talked about.
Yeah.
And this guy recognized me because I was this little shy kid, and I won the competition that day. It was a close thing, and you know, maybe they weren't that good. I got lucky, I don't know. But what it did is it transformed me. Yeah. Because I said, well, who's this guy? Dad wasn't lying, you know, because the guy, you know, because he wasn't like he said, hey, little guy, I remember you from, you know, 56. But it was like, I remember that group of kids. And it was so important that the story was true. And then he recognized me. So I went home and I devoured information. And it's a different time. And this is early 70s. Yeah. You know, I went to the Art Linkletter dictionaries. Anybody remember those? You know, my parents made us read them all. Remember, they were teachers. But that's, I became so interested. And as much as my father talked about civil rights and those issues, here again, it didn't resonate until I read about Jesse Owens and Hitler. And it all came together, this one little thing, like, it was like my life's purpose that I didn't realize of the activism from Dad, the excellence from Jesse, the support and love from Mother, you know, there's all these things. And then watching my parents sit here and become teachers. They were teachers during the school year. They ran a track club in the summer. We didn't go on vacations. Our vacations were track meets. But just watching them put their lives into young people, all these things were what I was getting. And I didn't realize, it wasn't anything that was done on purpose. But that's what I saw. That's what I thought was normal.
You mentioned Jesse, and he's been, you know, a beacon of light. Really, even after he passed, he was always an inspiration to you. But there was the dark side of Jesse, and that was racism, not just the Nazis.
You're right.
But the very fact that when he came back after winning those 4 gold medals in Berlin, I think we have the quote, and we can show it right now. Jesse Owens saying, I can't really see it, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to go like this. Although I wasn't invited to shake hands with Hitler, I also wasn't invited to the White House to shake hands with the president either.
We can slide up. You know, and that was part of the things that I was raised and talked about, being someone that was born in Birmingham. And
we're gonna talk about that in detail in a second. You're gonna not believe what you're gonna hear.
And so, one of the most amazing things, because we're in Los Angeles and we have the Olympics again, thank you. Yeah. But I remember when it was all over and I won the 4 gold medals, and there was a reporter that said, you might have won 4 gold medals, but you'll never be like Jesse Owens.
Wow.
And I said, you're right. I'm not going up the service elevator. I'm going up the front elevator. I'm not going to be in the back of the car. I'm going to be in the front of the car because of people like Jesse. So I don't know what you're doing, but I'm like, don't get it twisted here. Don't try to twist it. The reality is that you may see that as something, but I still look at of those giants that I had walked on the shoulders of to be in a place that I am, and I respect that. So that's something that was really important.
When I had a chance to chat with you fairly recently for a new series, by the way, new series I'm going to be doing for ESPN called GOATs, Greatest of All Time. It's May 30th. And Carl is prominently featured as one of the GOATs in the best of ways. I did not know that you really grew up in Birmingham early on.
But just 2 years.
Well, but 2 years, right. But your family,
Yes.
this is part of the amazing story. Two of your brothers were baptized by Martin Luther King, right?
Yep.
And your family knew Rosa Parks.
Yep, that was mom's friend. See there, that mother.
But the touching part of the story is your family also knew the children who were killed in the bombing in Birmingham. And we have the picture of these children. The reason, we don't do politics or anything like that for this interview, but it's worth remembering these youngsters. Addie Mae Collins, who's 14, Carol Denise McNair was 11, Carol Robertson was 14, and Cynthia Dion Wesley was 14, all killed in I think it was 62, I think it was. But the reason I bring this up is you don't know this about Carl, but he's very, very active in civil rights issues. And I know you were too young to know those children. They would be in their 70s now.
Right.
Were they alive? But it's always been a forefront for you, is civil rights and man's inhumanity to man. You ran for office, people may not remember this, in New Jersey. Didn't win, but no shame in that, because you believe in political activism.
Right.
And in the memory of those children who were killed, it's always been somewhere in the Lewis family.
Yeah, the McNair family was, her father was really close to my father. So, when I was raised, the thing I was fortunate about, I was raised in a town named Willingboro, New Jersey, because we moved when I was 2 years old. And Willingboro actually was founded as a segregated city in South Jersey. And so one of the first equal opportunity housing lawsuits was in the town I was in. It was you might have heard of the Levittown,
Yeah.
New York. It was a third Levittown. And so the city was, because of the military base, which Fort Dix was close, it kind of had all these African-American families that were college graduates, and they were trying to fill the city because the segregation was stopped. So they had all these people. So my aunt was there because her husband was in the military, and my mother came up there to take a job there because my mother was the first one in the family to go to college, but the rest of them after her followed her, all the girls. And so all of a sudden we had this whole city of these educated African Americans. And my father was a very serious person, you know. So that I was raised with a sense of pride. But you still, because of the respect that they demanded, I still didn't see a lot of the undercurrents. He talked about it, but I didn't see it because they were like, don't mess with Bill Lewis, you know. And so, but I did learn a sense of pride that I always had. And what's interesting, my whole career, I think I was, you know, in a lot of ways groomed to be me in every single way, and didn't realize it between watching my parents being active in this community, Dad talking about civil rights, look out for certain things of all people, get your education, work hard. And one of the best things that they did as parents is when I was with the track club, they acted like they treated me like everyone else. I know we say that, and I realize now more that I'm older than a coach, is they probably didn't have time to spend any more time with me. But it was important to know that they respected that, and I was able to watch them care for these other people and think that was normal. And that's a beautiful thing to see people, and that's, here again, stumbling back, that's why it's so important to see these people that care about these young people that will really benefit from that time and that energy. And so I didn't even know what the Jersey Shore was until I was in college. I never went to the Jersey Shore in the summer because we were at track meets. Christmases were then because kids didn't have money to go like we do now. They didn't have money to go to track meets. So it was you know, it really taught me and prepared me to be the person I had to be in a sport that needed people to do what we had to do at the time.
We'll take a picture of Martin Luther King. Great man, has been gone since 1968. a big inspiration in your life, your family's life. What would he think of what's going on in this country with voting being abridged for African Americans and poor people, people of color? You're from Houston.
Yep.
It's very critical, especially in Harris County. Again, I don't want to do politics. I'm not trying to do politics. But I wanted you to reflect on where we are in this country, and then we're going to talk sports. But when people have it tougher and tougher to vote, the access to vote, our democracy at stake, is it not?
What's challenging is almost everything's based on fear. You know, I think we're in a place in our country, in our world, where we should be focused on aspiration. And it isn't a matter of we want to go back to somewhere. We're just scared of where we want to be. And that's what's challenging to me. You know, being an African-American man, understanding this, there's no reason to be afraid of me. You know what I really want? I want opportunity, and my son wants opportunity, the same chances. And even though, you know, I come from a family that my parents were in Jim Crow, I don't want to get back at anyone. I don't know anyone that wants to get back at people. There's no retribution or like, you did this to me, I want to get back to you. And I think that's the basis of the fear. The fear is what will happen if they have a chance to have their opportunity. The reality is that if they have a chance to have their opportunity, we'll be Americans that feel like we're a part of the country. So what's scary to me is that there's so many people, millions of people in this country that so get it, like, let's just move forward. But there's so many that want to keep the status quo. And I represented the United States, and I don't even know how many competitions I have in so many places. But when you get to a point where you feel like, even through all of this, and especially now where we are, where people are being so vocal, if that isn't enough, does it really matter? Do I really matter? And that's the thing. I mean, it's so obvious where we are now because everyone, you know, so many people are just talking about, you know, just so blatant where we are. That's my fear, is that I never thought that I shouldn't put USA and go represent the country. But then there's a huge section of the country that says, I don't even want you a part of it. Yeah. That's the challenge. Yeah. And what I say to them is that, why are you afraid? Yeah. What are you afraid of? Just, no one wants to get back at you. People just want the same opportunity.
Would you take in, yeah. In 1968, it was quite a stir when John Carlos and Tommy Smith raised the fist. But now in the 90s, well, in the new millennium, of course, there's Colin Kaepernick, and he took a knee, and it was outrageous, but now you're seeing white coaches taking knees, by the way. Right. Would you take a knee?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about it is that what really disturbed me about the entire issue is that how easy it was to co-opt the message. Because I remember someone that I knew came to me and says, well, I don't agree with it because of all the military. Stop. It wasn't about he talked to the military. Right. It wasn't about the military. You waited till the message you wanted to hear, and then you comment on the message. The message is, look, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like right now, you know, my thing is that we need to stop videotaping, go live. I'm at the corner of so-and-so and so-and-so. A lot of young African-American boys are scared, and you can't even drive to the police station. Think about that. You're scared. So I'm like, go live. I'm live at the corner of Figueroa and so, and I'm being stopped right now. Yeah. That's where it is.
Just a matter of time before that happens.
Yeah, and the thing is that I understand that if you don't have an experience, then you don't know it. I mean, it's the same. I'm sorry, you said no political, but I get it. It's like, how can I tell a woman what to do with her body? All that stuff they have to deal with, and we're telling them what to do with their body on top of it? Come on now. If men had to have babies, civilization would have ended too many years ago. I mean, if it went back and forth, It just kept getting smaller and it had been done. I wouldn't have a baby with any of you guys. So it's the same thing. You know, it's the same. I'm sorry, it's the same.
No, that's all right. I'm glad you said that, by the way. I forgive us if you could peer a little, maybe.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Because we're going to now talk about the greatest. I've been in Los Angeles since 1977. That's 45 years by my math. And I've never seen anything like what we're about to talk about in a second. I was at the Olympiad in Los Angeles. How many, judging by applause, how many people were at the Coliseum or any of the, oh, look at them all.
Hey.
Wow, look at all these people. That's a lot more than I thought. It was electrifying. And over 1 week, Carl Lewis won 4 gold medals. And I'm going to let you completely take it away because we have a long video and it's beautiful music. And I want you to just reflect on what it meant, 1984, Los Angeles. Roll. Can you hear us?
Like to.
Oh, there we go.
I can narrate over that.
I want to roll this back.
Yeah,
please.
because
Can we start again? Because this is such beautiful video and such beautiful music. Let's roll it back, Gary.
Yeah,
Let's start again.
I want to narrate.
I want him.
I'm going to take you to the story.
I found this video. And I got my eyes filled up. It was so beautiful. It was so graceful. It was so triumphant. And I said, the hell with me talking about it. Let the man talk about it. So keep the mic open, roll the tape, and let Carl explain.
So just to kind of, as we're going to it, just to preface you, the Olympic track and field is 8 days, and I competed, and they have 1 off day. So it's 7 days of competition, 1 off day. I competed every single day. So the 100 meters is the first event, and if you don't win 1, then for the rest of the week, they're going to say you only won 3. You know, so when I got out of here, I was totally nervous, but when I got about 60 meters, I realized I drew even, and you know, if you knew me, I had that patented finish line. So right there is when I realized it was over, and it's in the middle of the race, but you still have to finish the race. So it was an amazing thing, and you see that. I've never felt the joy of any race in my whole career that I felt that moment. Then the next was a long jump, and I knew I was a big favorite, so I just had to get a jump out of the way because I still had 4 days of competition after the long jump. And this is a relay, which is the last event. You can't imagine how tired I was because if you think about it, I competed every day. It was 7 out of 8 consecutive days. And by then I was a disaster tired. There's Ron Brown, you know, on second leg. Rams in the house. And so to get that baton from him, and you know what, when you have a week like that and they give you a world record pace, you can't just win the medal. And that was the one time I was like, now it was the United States, it was the teammates, but I ran all the way through. Yeah, they gave me the lead, and I went for the record. So it was just an amazing ending. And when I finished that day, I realized that I'd never be bigger in the rest of my life. And I turned 23 1 month before that. And I said, I'm never going to be bigger in my whole life than this moment. And it wasn't a thing where I tried to chase it. I was at peace with that. And so I was just a part of a moment in time. And the fact that it was here in LA, my home country, and I was a part of the team that boycotted in 1980, and that was my first Olympics. It was just incredible. And then to match Jesse Owens' record, not knowing how to do it, because when I first said to Coach Tellez, I want to try it, he goes, well, I wish I could call someone and ask him, but they're all dead. So it's just hard to describe in that moment. Look at the stadium, the people were there. Every single session, morning and night, was sold out. And just to finish the week.
You get goosebumps still looking at it?
Absolutely. And then they picked me up and took me off the field, all the countries, after all the stuff that went on that week. But it's hard to describe what it's like to be on the podium, because when you win the Olympic gold medal, this is the last 4 years, it's your whole life. You know, you don't realize you're trying to do this, and then you start looking back when you're 16, you're 14, and you're 9. When I had my paper route on Sundays, my father or mother would drive the car, and I'd go get the papers out of the car and run them up to the house and hurdle over bushes. You don't realize that everything you did the whole life, some way or another, is for that moment.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Incredible.
Beautifully said. I want to talk about a somewhat uncomfortable subject, and that's the critics, because I was there in '84, and they roasted you. A lot of them. Not everybody, a lot of them. Didn't matter that you won the 4 gold medals. You were aloof, you were cocky. Joe had mentioned that maybe there would be the Michael Jackson of track and field. Yes, okay. Hee. By the way, did you ever meet Michael Jackson?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Michael told me some stuff. He's the one who told me to be aloof. Stay in your room, don't let anybody see you, and then they're like, you're mysterious. Michael told me that.
But I felt that I said at the very beginning of our profile tonight, I think you're the most misunderstood athletic, to me, hero this country has ever produced. People still to this day may not understand you. I think you said to me in Houston when I interviewed you, I spent part of my adult life pulling knives out of my back. Looking back as a grown man, 61 years old, when you were, 23 back then, what can you say about the critics, and what can you say about your image? What would you do over again, if anything? Well,
I look at it differently, and thank goodness we can look back on our lives. In a lot of ways, I just think I was ahead of my time, and I don't mean that like in a proud way. I didn't know it. I just, in the 70s, I remember watching the NBA on TV and the NFL on TV, and they were professional athletes and doing things, and I always wondered, why are we not like them? So I read Billie Jean King's book, I read Kurt Flood's book, Bill Russell, and I read about people that were game changers. And I said, why can't we do that here? And I didn't understand it. And so when I went to college to Houston, my lifetime goal was to break Bob Beamer's world record of 29.2. So when I was being recruited, I asked every coach, can you help me jump 29.2? And of course, most of them did a song and a dance. And then Coach Tellez, who didn't know how to do a song and a dance, said, yeah, I know how to do it. Let's look at some film, And so the first day I went to school there, I met with him, and I said, Coach, he goes, what do you want? What do you really want? I said, man, I want to be like those other guys. I want to be a millionaire, and I never want a real job. I want to do this. And shortly thereafter, I realized that track didn't make any money. No one made money. Houston, we had a problem.
That's right.
So what happened is that because I had this goal in my mind, I had to fill in the blanks. So being a shy kid out of high school, I took speech classes. I started reading up more on these other people. And so I wanted to be around entertainment people, all these things. And then with the civil rights things that my parents talked about. So what happened is that I started marketing myself in a way that people weren't doing then, especially an amateur athlete. And I learned that because I sought out that information.
And you got pushback from it.
Oh yeah. I mean,
who does he think he is with his own clothing line?
Oh, it's his clothes, he dress, he does this, he does that.
Grace Jones haircut?
Oh, absolutely. And Grace and I are friends too. But the thing when I look at it is that I credit my parents a lot, because what they did is that a lot of things that I did were out there, definitely out there. But they gave me the ability to have no fear. And so I had this goal of being that millionaire, of jumping 29 feet. And so if you say that, especially as an amateur athlete in the 70s and an African-American man, you're supposed to be happy you have a plane ticket, a round-trip ticket, not to mention saying I want to become professional and get paid. So that was it. And then when I used to, like I said, when I met Michael Jackson, he said, don't be seen. Don't go out and hang out all the time. I went to the Grammys one year and met him there. And so then I would stay in my room in Europe. But they would say, oh, he's just being arrogant in his room and he's aloof. Well, the reality is that in the early 80s, there was no television. And some of you are old enough to remember there was no Walkman or anything. You had to carry a boombox to Europe And of course, that only happened one year. And then, so I was in my room isolated for days at a time without doing anything. But one person in here that I credit that really helped me in that regard was Joe Douglas. Joe's here. Because what Joe did is that Joe made us go to museums in every country and eat local food. And those are the kind of things that were important because it taught me culture and ideas. And remember, my mother said you have to leave the country before you graduated from high school. So all of this culture was being brought in. So I saw the world, and I saw how people thought and did. And I learned that sparkling water, like I hate sparkling water. Well, by the end of the summer, I liked it because that's all you could drink. All these things. And so what happened is I just started saying, I just had the courage to wear the first bodysuit that a man wore because Nike said this is a better suit to wear. Well, I was the first one. Of course, oh my God, what's he wearing a bodysuit for? Or the interviews, being prepared.
Right.
But you know what? I worked for a radio station because I wanted to get better. I worked for a television station. I worked for 97.9 The Box. I worked for ABC in Houston, Channel 13. I took voice lessons, diction lessons. I did this stuff because I wanted to build my craft because I had this goal. So all this stuff. So then in those days, when you have hair, you're wearing bodysuits and everything else, oh my God, what's wrong with him? He's all that kind of stuff. But now, the things I did 30 years ago was freaking out, but it's like, oh, that's normal.
Right.
So I look back on it now, I wasn't ahead of my time because I was smart. I was just motivated to do something. I said I wanted something, and then the big thing was that the pushback was because of the professionalism.
Right.
And they were like, you're not supposed to make money. You're supposed to be happy you have a uniform.
Yep.
Or
So
we'll
true.
give you a trip somewhere. I'm like, pay me and I'll go on the trip myself. but because I wasn't in my place.
Yeah, there we go again.
And I refused to be in my place. I wanted the future, So that. But you have to also realize that I was only, when I first became #1 in the world, I was 19. My first world record, I was 19, and I had to mature very quickly to all of this stuff. And and of course my God, I look back now, as mature as I was still 19. And I still made decisions based on that. But I think my Joe, I think my teammates, because they had to go through stuff being around me. And my parents, my father was the level-headed one. My mother was a shady one. Yeah, get him. And he was like, no, be level-headed, because, I wanted to lash out sometimes. But Dad always said, don't worry about it. They'll be okay. It'll be okay.
That's a very good point. You gave me a transition to tell the story. 4 years later, your dad had passed away from 84, 84 games. He had colon cancer, I believe.
Yeah, colon cancer.
And it's very poignant, but you put a gold medal in his casket.
The LA 100 meters, yeah.
In 88, you're in Seoul. And everyone is expecting between you and Ben Johnson to win the 100 meters. And the night before, I'm going to set the story, you can finish it. Your mother came into your hotel room, which she never did, and laid down in front of you. Tell the story. This is an unbelievable story about the spirit of your father and your mother coming into your room, which was completely she never did that.
Right,
before.
of course. Yeah.
Explain what we're talking about.
Well, actually, I rented a home in Seoul for the Olympic Games. My mother came, my sister made the team again, and family, that kind of thing. I rented a place and actually found a place in a Baptist mission because I had a lot of death threats. So therefore, I was afraid our security, we were afraid to tell the Olympic Committee in public. Because in the 4 times I went to the Olympics, I was never able to stay in the village because of security reasons. So we found this place. No one knew where we were. The media was mad because they didn't know. The Olympic Committee was mad. So anyway, so we're in there, and it's the night before the 100-meter final, and I'm in the room there, and my mother comes in and brings like a blanket and lays on the floor. I'm like, what are you doing? I want to sleep in here tonight. And I said, well, get into bed. You know, I mean, it's big enough, you know. And she says, no, I just want to stay here. And it was just, so that's it. And what I would do before I went to sleep, whenever a competition was there, I would go over the competition. So it was 100 meters. I'd say, push out of the blocks, you know, put your feet down. The whole thing, I'd go over that. That's would be the last thing. You know, like you're saying, like people count sheep, I would go over the race, go over the race, go over the race, and fall asleep on that so it's locked in. And so she just was silent. She went there. And so I went to sleep. I fell asleep. And I had a dream that Dad came to me. And it wasn't a long thing. It was just this vision of there, and he said, son, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And then I wake up the next day. We go to the track. We're ready to go, and we run the race.
By the way, we're going to roll it now.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Let's roll the '88 Olympics. This is the Ben Johnson race where Carl was beaten. So we can roll it when you get a second here, and you can take us through it. Go ahead.
So I knew what Ben was doing. We all knew. And that's Mom. And she had the hardest job in the world, knowing the camera's on her and not showing emotion.
Yeah.
So the race is there. And so right here, he gets out, and I'm frustrated because my mind at this point was, just pause it for a second.
Can you
Just
pause
pause
that?
it for a second. So when I placed the medal in Dad's, in the coffin, I put it in his hand because his hand was in a funny position that I could put it there. And I didn't tell anyone I was going to do that, and so I just did it. My mother came and said, that's your medal, you know. And I said, no, Mother, don't worry about it. I'm going to win it back next year because it was 87.
Oh, wow.
I said, I'm going to win it. I'm going to win it back next year. So that race was not really winning the Olympic gold. It was winning the gold back that I gave to Dad.
Oh.
And so
Let's finish the rest of this video because
when you see my emotion, it was that I let Dad down. It wasn't losing the race. I let him down.
you felt you let your dad
I let him down. And so I went over, I went over to congratulate him, and he didn't acknowledge me. He's like, yeah, whatever. And you see I'm walking. That's where my emotion was. I let Dad down that day. And so the main reason why I went over and congratulated him, because I knew he was cheating, is because, you know, I always felt like I can't pick up the phone and call Dad. I can't ask him a question. But I communicate by my actions. And I know that if I had pouted, then they would have blessed me out later on that night. I knew it. And so I went over to do that, and he kind of brushed me off, and I made sure we did that and went away. And the crazy thing about it is that it was over, you know, Joe was there, my mother was there, everyone was sad, and everyone was, of course. And I was like, we got to get it together because, you know what, I got a long jump tomorrow. And that's what saved me. That saved me is the fact that I couldn't stop. And I didn't want that moment to take away my week. And so the next day I went on, I long jumped. Then the day after the long jump final, I won that. And then the news came back.
that Ben Johnson tested positive. And so when your dad said in your dream, it's going to be okay, it was okay.
It was okay, but I think I believe that it was the okay was a test of character, you know, and I didn't, you know, look after, you know, I believe that it was a test of me acting right in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the pride, and I really am proud of that medal because of that.
If he doesn't take the juice, you win that race.
Yeah, we wouldn't even know who he is. But you know what? I look back. But that was kind of a little sly shade. But I look at it, but I look differently, you know. And you're exactly right. He would, but you know what? That's one of the most important moments of Olympic history, sports history, because we never thought about drugs. We've been talking about it, and now it's an integral part of our sports. And I was a part of that story, so I look at it that way.
Do you look at it as winning the gold medal outright, or still don't? In other words, he wins the gold medal, taken down, you win the gold medal. Do you still look at that as a victory?
Yeah, I look at it as a victory for sports.
Good said. Good
It's
point.
a victory for sports. It's not just like saying simple like, oh, doing the right thing. It's more than that. It's working hard, and it's a message that the vast majority of people don't want to take drugs. They want to be fair. They want to be the best they can be. They want to look back on their life. We're here. We are. 88 is 30-some years ago, 34 years ago.
34.
And he's still struggling. Because, I tell the college kids all the time, the reason I work you hard, because the worst thing to be is a person that said, I wish I had.
Yeah.
So I know he says, oh, I ought to beat everyone anyway. Well, you didn't anyway.
Yeah.
So you're the one that's miserable in your life, trying to wonder, what would I really have been? What could I have done? And most people don't want to be that. They want to know what they could be or know what they would have done.
To that end, before we get to our final clip, Usain Bolt, fastest man on the planet, big dude, man. He's what, 6'3", 6'4"?
6'4", yeah, he's tall.
Huge, powerful, Jamaican, world-class athlete. In your prime, head-to-head, would you have beaten him?
Well, I say it this way. I beat the people I ran against. and where's Little Man? That was my second event. I was a long jumper, but I beat the people I ran against. I'm asked that question a lot, and I think that if you're in any sport, you can sit here and say, oh, so-and-so's the greatest of all time, but I know they wouldn't want to play against Bill Russell. I know they wouldn't want to play against Oscar Robertson, and Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, that guy triple jumped 53 feet.
That's right.
So the thing is that great athletes, you beat the people you run against. You beat the people you compete against.
Would you have liked to have had the chance, though?
I would have liked to have had social media. Woo! You think I was a mess without it? Can you imagine me with social media? I would have thrived like you have no idea in this time. But some people are there. I don't look at it like, oh, I wish I was here. I look at it, I'm thankful where I was, because there was a generation before me that had less, and a generation before them that didn't have the access, and a generation before them that, so I look at it like that. But I'm just happy the kids have what they have now. But I know good and well, the competitor that I was, I would have been competitive at any generation.
I agree with that, definitely. All right, we're almost out of time, and I want to acknowledge this award too in a second. But to me, as great as Los Angeles was, the gold medals, there's nothing like the final leap that will last forever, they'll last a lifetime. Before we roll it, I'm going to read what Rick Riley wrote. 8 gold medals wasn't enough for Carl, who qualified third at the age of 35 in the 1996 Olympic trials in the long jump. But he had one last leap left in him. 27, 10, and 3/4 in Atlanta was his longest jump at sea level in 4 years, and you're 35. He wrote, Lewis beat age, gravity, history, logic, and the world at a rocking Olympic stadium in Atlanta to win the Olympic gold medal in the long jump. It was, quite possibly, his most impossible moment in an impossibly brilliant career. Take us through it. This is Atlanta. This is perhaps, in my opinion, it was the greatest moment in Carl's career, but it was so astonishing because he's 35. He's past his prime, or so we thought. We'll roll the tape, take us through, and tell us about the pressure. This was your final jump.
Well, when I get to Atlanta, this was the third jump in the third round. And why it's important is that I was in third place right here, and I'll backtrack. I made the jump, did it. I knew when I left the board it was a big one. So a lot of the stuff you see is drama. Because everyone's watching, so I'm bringing the crowd in. So when I landed, I knew it. When you hit the board, you know it. I'm like, I got one. And I hit the board, I went over and I laid down on my face because I know they're looking, And then I went straight to the crowd, because when I came in to the stadium, the crowd gave so much love. And I knew that I had them on my side, so I was just saying, I'm going to use you. So if you watch, you see I was looking to the board? I knew it. Now watch, just drama. Watch. That, I always have this line that I used to say, getting free rent in people's heads. So what happens is that they just have a random order, you take 3 jumps, and after 3 jumps, they take whoever has the longest jump goes last, and it goes down descending order and they take 8 people to the final. Well, I knew that I had to had the best jump after 3 jumps if I had a shot. And I knew that I'd have free rent in their head, okay? So I went down on this 3rd jump. I was in 3rd place, and I popped it, and I knew it at the board, it. And I landed, I did it, and I said, basically, I hit the ground, I said, you got it. I didn't know how far it was, but I knew it was in the lead. And I knew that there would be this thing of, I don't want to look, what is it? And then they saw me, and they said, oh, my God. Then, of course, I played to the crowd. The crowd's going crazy. and then it's like, he did it again. Damn. And so after that, the last 3 rounds, I said, of course, when you're in the lead and you have 3 rounds to go, you're supposed to say, okay, let's stop now. But they were, the vast majority were fouls. The guys were just discombobulated. And then we get down to the end, and there's one guy left, one jumper left, and he goes down and he fouls, and it's over. And so the whole audience, the last 3 rounds, I felt like the entire audience was just sitting there waiting because I didn't take the last 2 jumps. I said, look, this is it. It's a wrap. 35, 27-10. It's a wrap. It's over. And so it was one of those things, I dare you to do it. And it just didn't happen. And then when it ended, he did the last jump. I remember going down the runway towards there to go out go and do a victory lap. Well, I get down there, and the official says, are you going to take your last jump? I'm like, seriously? I'm out of here, And I knew at that moment that they would never get a shot. I knew I would never jump again. So they would never get a shot at me again. So I go out there, and I go to the victory lap. And, of course, they're announcing all this stuff. And the funny thing is that I'm going around there, and I see everyone. The crowd was amazing. The people are amazing. I mean, I'm just doing this lap. And I get down to the home stretch, and I'm coming up. And my sister Carol, who was doing TV, runs down there and finds me and hugs me at the finish line. And there were some runners kind of running around, pacing and everything else. And an official comes over to me and says, you have to get off the track because of the 10,000-meter heats. I'm like, 10,000? Well, I will not say the first word I said, but 10,000, and kept running. And went all the way around, and the whole stadium stopped, and people weren't paying attention, and it just went there. And I ended up in that lap. I went back, and I went over to the long jump pit and got some sand.
Oh.
And I was just sitting there thinking, you gotta be freaking kidding me.
Yeah.
I'm taking this sand from this pit.
It's like full circle at the beginning of this interview as a little boy in the sand pit, as a little kid.
So now I ended my career playing in the sand pit, getting some sand and putting it in a piece of plastic that I had.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that part
and that's how it ended.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. All right. Hey, we're almost out of time, and I want to do metaphor time because we just saw your final leap in your career, in your athletic life was your final leap. What can you say, metaphorically speaking, about people who think that they're done, they can't have another leap in their life, there's not going to be another chance, and maybe one of the foundations of what we're doing here tonight is to give a kid a chance at another leap, so to speak. Reflect on one last gasp, one last leap in one's life, and making good on it, and why it's never over. It really isn't really over.
In August of '95, I set a goal to be the absolute best I could be in '96. And I set that goal to end the day before the Olympic trials started.
Huh.
So it wasn't about the outcome, it was a journey. So I worked harder, I did things I never did before. I went in the weight room, I wasn't a weightlifting guy. I did whatever I needed to do to get my body in the shape it needed to be at 34. Most of that time, I turned 35 that year. And when the Olympic trials started, I was ready. And so I went there. Like you said, I was third in the long jump. I did all the events and everything that I did the whole time. But the thing is that if you make life about the journey, then it makes the outcome even sweeter. Because if I made the team by a quarter of an inch, and I remember, this is really weird, I've never really talked about this, but I remember making the team. I went home, and I went to a track meet in North Carolina. Didn't really perform that well, and I remember Joe was asking me, he's like, what's going on with you? And so I was kind of burned out, and I barely made the team, and I didn't know. And I went home, and I was watching a documentary. This is really weird, but it was a Nixon documentary, and it just because I like politics and I like things, but in history. But he had his farewell speech when he talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, although, he said, I've been to the highest highs and the lowest low. Although there are those who will hate you, they'll never win unless you hate them back. Then you destroy yourself. And I watched that in there, and it wasn't about me destroying or hating anyone. It was just about me finding something that I decided to give everything at that time. And so then when I get to the Olympic trials, Olympic Games, I go in the first day, and when I go out there, the entire crowd erupts for just the qualifying. And I was very emotional to that. I go to the first jump. I don't do very well. The second jump, terrible, and I dropped to like 12th place. They only take 12 to the final, and then I go to 13th, and I go to 14th, and I go to 15th place.
Wow.
And so I get to the runway, and I stand there, and I've said, you've won 8 gold medals and a silver medal. You've had 17 years of a world-class career. And if you fail now, that's your story. That's the nature of the way it is. Like, oh, he should have stopped. Should have been over. And so I went down on that jump, and I hit it, and I knew it was a pretty good one. And I go down. It was the number 1 jump of the day. So I went from like 15th place, and everyone knew because the announcer, like Darth Vader, oh, Carl's in 14th place. Carl's in 15th place. Seriously? I mean, dude, give a brother a break, So, and it was like when I made the jump, everyone took pictures, but when I landed, it was like, and then they started clapping. So I remember walking out of the stadium, and a good friend of mine was there at the mixed zone, and he was just psyched. He was like, "Ooh, you got through it, man. You're going to win this thing tomorrow." And I said, "I know it," because I felt the spirit, I felt the energy, and I knew that they would go to bed with me. Like I said, I'm counting sheep, they're counting me. I knew I had free rent tonight. So it's just an amazing thing that you have to just try to focus on being your best, understanding it's not perfect. You're going to have challenges. But when it comes down to it, just do whatever you can to not be the person that said, I wish I had. And most cases, I should not have gone to 96 because of the risk of doing it. But I know good and well that if I had not gone for 96, then I would have done that. Now, this is a fact that people, it's out there. But I tried to win 4 gold medals 4 times. So I did it in LA. I got 2 golds and a silver in 88, 2 golds in 92, and 1 gold in 96. So I was 1 for 4 in my quest to win 4 gold medals. And I tried at 35 years old because I didn't want to say, I wonder if I could have done that. So it's back to the very beginning of no fear. And so I had a career with no fear, and I wasn't afraid of that because, and even today, people come up and I didn't win every race. We know that. I lost races. I just focused on making sure it wasn't on TV. But they don't ask me about those races. They just say you won 9 gold medals. And so that's the biggest thing is don't be afraid of what you can't do. Be afraid of what you're afraid of that you didn't try.
Oh, wow, that's great philosophy. It really is beautiful. You know, Carl and I go back almost 40 years, pretty much 40 years, and I always knew him as a wonderful guy, and it killed me to see how they skewed you and skewered you in Los Angeles and other places too. But this is, as you can tell, this is a quality human being here, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you came here tonight. I'm going to offer you this award. It's the Roy Firestone WSA Award, Making Youth Sports Possible to Carl Lewis in recognition of your athletic accomplishments and your commitment to youth sports in Southern California, really youth sports all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Lewis.
Thank you. No, come on.
Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you enjoyed yourself this evening. Once again, Carl Lewis, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a nice hand for Mr. Roy Firestone and a man who went from number 15 to number 1 in your heart, Carl Lewis. Please, you are welcome to take a hat home for your experience as a remembrance today, and we're grateful to each of you for being with us. Thank you for being a part of the West Coast Sports Associates. Keep in mind, a lot of good stuff coming your way in Los Angeles. Thank you for being with us this evening, and please arrive home safely. Good night, everyone.